We already saw in a previous video how one-way export pulls data out of your store and writes it into Google Sheets. Then we saw two-way sync that does that as well, but it also lets you edit in the sheet and push your changes back. And then there is one-way import, which is the one we are doing today. Uh, in this case, your spreadsheet is the source of truth, going into Shopify in one direction only. So it never reads your store back into the sheet, and it never overrides your spreadsheet with Shopify data. It only pushes, which makes it the right tool when you already have the data sitting in a file somewhere. Let's say a supplier feed, a price list, a catalog you're moving over from a different platform. So the information exists. It's just in a spreadsheet instead of in your store. And this is what closes that gap. So I will start by creating a new spreadsheet. So let's go to configure spreadsheet. So this part you already know, but the sync direction is where we decide which sync type we want for our spreadsheet. Let's choose one-way import. You'll notice the form gets shorter the moment I select it. So the second step is defining the Google Sheets source. And here we can select between a spreadsheet that lives in our Google account, the one that we just connected when we installed InComics, or we can select a public link. This is a spreadsheet that owns a different account, and we need to give access so it can be publicly shared, and anyone with the link um, can read it and edit it. So I'm going to go with a spreadsheet that I have under my account here, and I need to paste the full URL. And this is the spreadsheet I'm going to use as an example. This is the catalog from a supplier. They have the product title, the option name, option value, SKU, quantities, price, and other columns that I'm not really interested in, like notes, product ranking, and barcode. So this is what my supplier handed to me, and I want to basically create all these products or update depending if they exist or not in my Shopify store, and I want to do it right away. So this will be our source of truth. So I can copy the URL from this tab. I will paste it here, and I can select here which is the sheet I will use. In this case, it's name August 2026, and this will be the name of this spreadsheet in my eComics account, so I can identify this sync later. So step 3 is the mapping, and this is the part I will slow down on because it's where the actual work happens. Nothing shows up until you hit preview, so let's do that. This goes and reads the sheet and pulls back your header row along with the first 10 rows of your data. And now here's the thing to notice. If you go down, we will see this warning that says select at least one field to map to a column to save the spreadsheet configuration. And here the legend says that if the column is white, it means that it will not be read or written by eComics, so the column is basically ignored. And if it's green, it means that it will be mapped to a Shopify field, so this will be imported. So at the moment, when we hit preview or when we load the spreadsheet the first time, everything will be white. It means that nothing is mapped. One way to start mapping is to selecting a field and mapping one by one, but we can click on map columns to fields automatically, and it will try to um, map the columns by name. So if it contains title, it will try to map it to the product title in Shopify, and same for the rest of the columns. So let's go that way. And as you can see, most of the columns, like the title here, it's okay. The option one name uh, is mapped to the product option name. That is correct. But here it says option two name product from Shopify is mapped to the product option value in the spreadsheet. That's not okay because we want to map it to an actual value, not an option name. So click on the header here, and let's try to find the value, which is on the variant field group, option one value. Click on the field, and now it's correctly mapped to the corresponding field in Shopify. We can go through each one of the columns here. Product SKU, we have the SKU at the variant level, and then we have some columns that again were not mapped automatically. So the map automatically flow couldn't understand what product quantities mean. So we can click on select field and try to map it to a field in Shopify that actually holds the quantities. And we know that inventory available is the one, so we can select to which locations we want this quantity to be linked to. So I'm going to go with inventory from location number 2. And now it's green, so it got mapped. Product price seems to be okay. And then product notes, product ranking, these two, there are no fields like that in Shopify, so we can ignore it. So our configuration is done and the mapping is correct. So the next step is to configure the refresh schedule if we want. This is to enable automatic sync by choosing a schedule. We already saw this in the previous videos, but if we want to import automatically, if that is something you intend to do, you can do so, and it will import at the desired cadence, minutes, hours, days, or week. So just select it here. Let's click on save, and it says that the configuration was saved. It's validating that spreadsheet. What does validating the spreadsheet mean? So if you already saw the two-way sync, you know that at the end of our spreadsheet, we will have a status column. In this case, it was added, so this is worth to be mentioned because uh, every time you use a spreadsheet here, at the end of the last column, we need an extra column, a space for an extra column, because the status column will be added there. So in this case, the validate ran automatically after saving it. It didn't import anything. It's just telling me what will happen after I click import. So it says that the product will be created because in this case, these products we see here with these SKUs, it couldn't map it to any of the existing products in Shopify. So it knows that it needs to create them. So we can go back to Shopify and click on import, or we can go to the extensions and use our Google Sheets add-on. This is much easier because you can work from within the Google Sheets spreadsheet. You don't need to go back and forth between Shopify and Google Sheets. So let's go here and click on import. It will take a couple of seconds or minutes depending on the amount of data we have on the spreadsheet. And if we go to Shopify, we will see that there is a new execution here, and it says that it's importing. Okay, so it finished. And in the status, we see that the product variant was created. This is the same message on every row. And if we go to eComics, we can wait a couple of seconds for it to be refreshed, but it says updated. So 24 items were created in Shopify from this supplier spreadsheet. Let's say that our supplier updated their spreadsheet and included a new column here. And let's say this column is actually the product vendor. And we are interested in it because it's worth to be showing in our Shopify store. So let's call it test just for now and only apply it to the first two products. Any update that happens on the supplier spreadsheet, we need to go to eComics and update the configuration so it knows about this new column. And we first need to map it in order for the one-way sync to work. So here we will see that the column vendor is ignored because it hasn't been mapped so far. We can search for vendor, apply it, and there we go. We can now save this spreadsheet and see how after importing the vendor, we'll update on the first two products. Okay, so it was saved, and now we can click validate here and go back to the spreadsheet, and we will see that all the rows will show us product and variant will be updated because these are actually products that we already created. And in the case of these two items, the product vendor will be a new attribute that will be updated. The rest will still be blanked. So we can now click on import, and it will push all those changes into Shopify. All right, we see how the product and variant were updated. Another thing that could happen that is worth to be mentioned is that let's say that for some reason the header changed and now it's product vendor X. Because we are storing the configuration in eComics, when we try to validate or import, it will show an error. We need to go every time there is a change, go to edit here And in this case, when we go to the format data step, we will see this error saying that the headers in your spreadsheet used for mapping have changed. Click preview to review and update your fields mapping. So we click preview. It will bring all the changes here. So far the configuration looks right, but now it doesn't know about vendor. So we need to come here and select vendor. So these are minor changes that happen from time to time, uh, but it's a good thing to know about them beforehand. And another thing that can happen is that the structure of the spreadsheet that we are using as our source of truth, in this case the supplier, must have the headers on the first row. If we try to add a row above and try to preview this, the we will end up with some issues in our configuration that will affect our syncing. So always be sure to store in the first row of the spreadsheet the headers, the actual columns that we will be mapping into our Shopify fields. Last but not least, we already saw it when we were trying to update or create different products, but uh, if we compare one-way import versus two-way, whenever we make a change, we don't get to see the changes on the road. So that means that every time we hit import, every time we hit validate, it will go through all the rows in this spreadsheet and uh, it will scan and compare if the product exists or not. It will use columns like SKU if it exists. If it not, it will use the product variant ID. And if it's just a product level change, it will use the product title or handle. So it can use different references in order to understand if this is an existing product or this is something that needs to be created.